talked to so many women over the years about the imposter syndrome, and I must say I had a bit of that imposter syndrome thing myself recently when Hillary Rodham Clinton said something about my new book, Love Your Imposter. And the thing that Hillary Clinton also said was when she arrived at Wellesley College for the first time, she felt there were so many other smarter women than she was. And of course that really resonated with me on a slightly different scale, because when I arrived here at Newnham College, Cambridge for the first time in a slightly battered old car, I really felt that someone was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, do you know, we've made a bit of a mistake, you don't really belong here. But I did end up coming here, and I ended up actually living in that room right at the top there. But the reason I'm here right now is because I've come here to meet one of my personal heroines, someone actually I met when I first came to this college. She was Mary Beard then, and today she is, of course, Professor Dame Mary Beard. I'm so looking forward to talking to her. I have to say it's a bit nerve-wracking too, but here we go.
Fancy meeting you.
I know, I just randomly walking past, so I thought, I'll just give her. Mary, thanks very much for
Pleasure.
having a conversation today. I was just talking about you, funnily enough, outside, because I did confess that you were one of my heroines when I first came to Newnham. And I think this is probably also the place that I first experienced this imposter syndrome business.
And I think everybody does, you know, just like you, I remember coming here and thinking, oh, it's a mistake, you know, the letter went to the wrong person.
Yeah.
They're all going to be so much cleverer than me. You know, and I think I haven't met anyone, even if they pretend not to think that.
Who doesn't really?
No.
Well, I think the numbers would say something like 70% of people experience these sort of things, whether they talk about them very much or not. And for some reason, women seem to suffer from it more than guys.
Yeah. I vividly remember exactly those kind of sinking in the stomach feelings. I think it's very funny because you know, if you'd have asked me back then what I would have imagined you doing, heaven knows what it was, but it wouldn't have been what you did. And you know, and I don't think, I mean, might sound as if it's a criticism, and it's not meant to be. I don't think I would have imagined you writing a book.
I don't think I often sat down and wrote huge reams of anything, and it's something, you know, that I've actually got to really enjoy later in life. So I've done books before about brand strategy and the future of brands and things like that, but this time I wanted to write a book about new forms of leadership, because there are so many things we've observed both recently and also over time about the sort of people that we tend to think those people are the sort of, they're sort of leaders. Whereas actually I think if we've learned anything over the last few months, apart from the last few years, is that actually we need new types of leaders. Well, I guess also we have a particular point of view, don't we, about people who might be in the academic world, just like sometimes we can have some strange points of view about people in the business world. And I think I just got really frustrated with somehow people perceiving that business was populated by Dr. Evils, you know, who are there to sort of, you know, to spoil the environment and rip off people and everything else. And what I discovered is actually there were a lot of really decent human beings in business, and I kept on thinking, why don't you just show that? Stop pretending that you know everything and that you chew concrete blocks for breakfast. And by the way, I think I probably behaved like that. I thought that was what it was like to be a leader in my sort of faking it, you know, period.
You imagine that the people who were going to get on, you know, are of a particular type, and they're not like you.
Exactly.
And you know, and you see to some extent that's self-fulfilling, because you look at the number of women who are professors in university, it's still dramatically lower than men. But actually underneath all that, there's a kind of sense of what do you imagine it is like to be the kind of person who gets on. And you so often think it can't be someone like you.
Exactly. And it does come back to this imposter thing, that somehow, you know, despite the fact you might be quite successful, you don't really deserve it. Yeah. Someone, you mentioned that someone might tap you on the shoulder and go, you know, it was a bit of a mistake. That's exactly how I felt too. And again, I think these human emotions and sense of insecurities and things like that, what I wanted to do through the book was to reassure people this is a completely normal, you know, common human phenomenon. I mean, people call it the imposter syndrome, but as about 70% of people seem to experience it, it feels more like just being a human being.
That works in the academy, but it sure works in politics too. That, I mean, you know, you just look.
Absolutely.
You know, what do you have to be a woman who looks like a leader?
I know, but also someone who acts like that too. I think we're all a bit in love with Jacinta Ardern at the moment, aren't we? I mean, frankly, Jacinta for world president, I think we're sort of thinking a bit like that at the moment. But she's done so many fantastic things, hasn't she? Apart from showing that you can be strong and kind. She's dealt with terrorist attacks, volcanoes, the pandemic, while holding a new baby, all of these things. And I guess we could contrast, couldn't we? The people who are the more populist leaders who are running major countries and making a complete hash of what's been happening over the last few months. And those, you know, female leaders in Scandinavia, Jacinta Ardern, Angela Merkel, who actually seem to be making a slightly better better impact.
I did, of course, read it very carefully, looking for references to the classical world, Rita.
I'm delighted that you were looking.
I didn't find very many, but I did. Aristotle has a kind of cameo role here, which I thought was quite interesting, because you're trying to say, look, one of the things that Aristotle goes on about is if you sort of persistently practice showing a quality, you'll end up really having that quality. And that was in your very businessy chapter, as far as I'm concerned. You know, you don't have to fake it to make it.
Yes, indeed.
And I wondered really about that idea of, okay, so we've got, let's embrace our imposter syndrome, but what is this about not faking it to make it? So what do we do then?
I think it's a really interesting concept, because people do talk a lot about the, you know, why don't you fake it to make it, fake confidence and things like that. And it just reminded me, I don't know if you remember this TV series called Faking It. It was on Channel 4 you know, around the year 2000 or something. And it had a series of, you know, interesting characters who for a month were trained to be something that they weren't. And weirdly, after about a month of intensive teaching and training and support and everything else, they managed to convince some experts that, you know, that they weren't the fakers. And I thought that was really interesting. And you can do that for a month. But if you are faking it day in, day out for your life and your working career, pretending you're some sort of corporate construct, someone that you're not, you're either going to make yourself miserable or ill. And what I'm saying is you can make the very best of yourself, and it's tools and techniques that you can use to really make the most of yourself and acquire these characteristics, as opposed to being someone else. Because you'll never be as good at, frankly, at being someone else as you are being yourself.
It totally resonated, because I remember when I was a young lecturer, and I kind of thought that in order to be a successful lecturer, I had to do what the guys did. You know, and I would sort of, so I would get up there, it would take me forever planning this. It was hugely time consuming. And I remember sort of standing in the lecture room, and I'd hear what I was saying, and it seemed like somebody else was talking. Or it seemed as if I was a kind of a not very good professional actor.
It's just, when you are in the faking it mode, however one sort of, you know, captures it, you can listen to yourself and think, that is not me.
No,
that is not me.
Right.
And that again, to my mind, is how you can really test yourself on whether or not you are making the most of yourself.
When I was writing Women in Power, because I was really trying to think about how do women sound? How do they get taken seriously? You know, why is it that a deep voice that they get told off to go and learn how to do?
Yes.
Why does that sound more authoritative? And I think there's one cartoon that I start the book with, which is, let's say it's a business meeting. It's blokes around the table, one woman, and the chair is saying, well, that's a very good suggestion, Miss Triggs. Perhaps one of the men would like to make it now. And I think there's two things about that which strikes me. One is you can tell that joke to any woman on the planet at whatever level they are, whether they're talking about the office meeting, whether they're talking about politics, the law, the factory. Every single woman instantly recognises it.
I know.
They just get it.
There are certain things that we can all do. I mean, clearly there's a lot of pressure to help change systems, change expectations, help more people who are different into leadership roles. If you want to end up running organisations, whether we like it or not at the moment, the language of the boardroom has got a lot of finance in it. And if you can't speak that language, you're not going to be able to be as influential as you might be. And I had to learn it slightly later in life because I didn't learn accountancy or anything like that. And of course, when you learn it later, if you're not careful, you speak with a slightly dodgy accent and you can get a few. On the other hand, you know, I have seen so many programmes, as I'm sure you have, of those people, you know, those old rock stars and celebrities who ended up penniless, you know, and drunk or whatever. And of course, they just thought, I want to do the creative bit. I don't want to get involved in that sort of legal and financial thing. But of course, their agents went off a long time ago with all the money because they knew how to manage the money and manage finance. And I think without that, you just won't be as influential because you need money to make things happen. And I think this is a problem for, more of a problem for women because women tend not to choose so many STEM type subjects. They tend not to choose as many science-based or mathematics-based subjects. And that is an issue because therefore they're having to learn many of these things at a later stage in their lives.
I think you're right about STEM, and I think it is changing a bit. I mean, people, particularly my generation, you went down an arts route, and figures we were sort of kind of got the impression they were a bit scary and not for us. And I think that what I've seen is that, look, it isn't rocket science actually. If you put a bit of effort into it, you can become functionally numerate in a way that you never imagined. And that, although I can't claim quite to have reached that point, but I can see it's possible. And but I can also see, and I'd certainly do this if I was starting out again, you can see that that's what gives you a huge amount of control. You can't make any suggestion about any institution, whether it's the local village hall or a college or a business, unless you know how to fund it. And unless you see where is the resource going.
Also, I think to be influential, and I feel a bit weird saying this, but I'm going to anyway, there is an element of thinking consciously about how you want to build your personal brand, how you want to be as influential as you can be. And frankly, I've never been good at taking my own advice on this one, and anything I ever say on this subject is driving in the rear view mirror. You just offer a sort of smorgasbord of some of the things that you've found over the years and said, maybe pick up a few. But I think some of the principles about branding you can sort of apply to individuals, like how clear are you about what you are good at, what you stand for, what you want in life.
I find it quite hard to watch myself on the telly, but I do. Occasionally it has to be slightly alcohol assisted in order to watch. But and sometimes I think I do well, and sometimes I don't think I do so well, etc., etc. But I always recognise me. It is me,
it is.
For better or worse. And
it's authentically you, and it does all work together. I think it's a really intriguing conversation though about personal presentation, because sometimes when you talk about personal branding yourself, people immediately go to, well, does that mean I've got to wear, as you say, power shoulders and go and have my hair coiffed all the time and wear stiletto, all that sort of stuff? And that is just old stuff, and what's more, it was only, you know, a fraction right, even back then. I think rather more is just saying, if you want certain sorts of jobs or roles or things like that, you just need to think about how you're going to be making the best of yourself. And you wouldn't ever say to a company, for example, yeah, you've got a great product, but you just stick it in a shabby old box and, you know, on the shelf, it'll be all right. You just want to make sure that you're doing some justice to what you know and what you want to do. Yeah.
You know, and I think that's absolutely right. People often say about me, miscomprehending, I think, she doesn't care what she looks like. And I think, sorry, there is nobody in the world, apart from a few very odd sociopaths,
who really don't care.
You know,
absolutely.
I look like this, guys, because I want to look like this.
Yeah.
Not because somehow I don't know about different ways of doing it. You know, I'm a social being in the world, and you know, I know there are other ways of looking. I have chosen this one.
Yeah, and also I do remember you telling me though that you do quite like shoes. Yeah. You're quite fond of the shoes. So you know, there are, and as you say, frankly, if people are getting washed and showered in the morning and things like that, it's just a matter of degree. You know, how far is one going to go? And again, how does it fit with what you want to do, how you want to be, and how you're going to be as influential as you can be, bearing in mind we need a lot more people who are humans and preferably female to be running organisations.
I mean, I have to say, I didn't ever imagine you'd turn out like this. And I have read...
I'll take that as a compliment.
I think so. It's kind of surprise. The surprise. I knew you do something really interesting, but you know, certainly I couldn't even begin to tell you what I predicted. But I think it's been fun for me, as well as interesting looking at the book. And I think that, I mean, you better tell me if you think this is a good take-home point. I came away thinking it crystallised things I sort of knew already, but hadn't expressed in that kind of coherent way. And it's that, look, embrace the imposter. You know, it's quite a good thing to feel you're an imposter. It's quite a self-aware way of being in the world. Make the most of it. Don't try to sort of, you know, don't try some kind of off-the-peg quack cures for it.
Yeah, yeah. That's a fantastic way. That's a great way of summing up. And I really wanted to try and get that across, which is, this is a normal thing. It can even be quite a useful drive. And that's certainly what some researchers suggested. And we've got people, you know, Hillary Clinton, you know, Michelle Obama, Emma Watson, Olivia Colman, Tom Hanks. All of these people are talking about how they have this imposter thing, and it's made them work harder, practice harder, learn harder, and so on. And it's a human thing, and we just need more human beings who are prepared to talk about some of the things that people feel running organisations, and this is hopefully a good thing for the world. I've loved talking to you, Mary. Thank you so much.
It's been great, Rita. Oh, what a nice surprise.
Surprise or otherwise. Anyway, I think, well, I remember back on, as I say, the time that I met you. You were the first person I met when I came here. And even though we might have had different life experiences and things like that, we both, I think, loved Virgil. I think that was one of the things that, so finding common things, common connections with other people is really what life is about,
and
I hope.
There's a generosity to academic institutions that people, I think, tend to forget because they think they're all about judging you rather than, and I remember Joyce Reynolds saying, you know, when you were perhaps being, you know, less devoted to your studies than you might have been, she'll go far. She'll go far, Rita.
Well, amazing. And
a prediction come true.
Well, there we are. I wish I put money on it because, frankly, I don't think anyone would have taken that bet sometime ago. Anyway, Mary, it's been great seeing you. Thank you so much. And it's amazing to come back here. It's always life is a full circle, the circle of life. So, anyway, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Do we elbow bump?
Oh, that we're getting too close.